The ferry sliced through the turquoise water like a blade, carrying Jake Miller and his German Shepherd Fero. Not Fido, as most people misheard, but Fero, named after the Hindi word for fierce. Fero stood at the edge of the deck, ears alert, amber eyes scanning the horizon. He wasn't nervous, but he wasn't relaxed either. Jake smiled, rubbing the dog's neck. "Easy, boy. This is supposed to be a vacation." The island ahead was called Kairoa Island, a lesser-known paradise advertised as untouched, peaceful, and safe. Too safe, if you asked Fero. The breeze carried a strange scent, salt, metal, and something faintly rotten. Fero let out a low growl. Jake ignored it. After 6 years working private security, this trip was meant to reset his life. No guns, no threats, just beaches, wildlife, and long walks with his dog. As soon as they arrived, trouble found them. Near the dock, a local fisherman collapsed, clutching his chest. Tourists froze. No one moved, except Fero. The dog lunged forward, barking sharply, circling the man. Jake followed, instinct kicking in. He noticed the fisherman's lips, bluish, trembling hands. "Poison?" Jake muttered. Jake used his emergency kit, forcing the man to vomit. Minutes later, the fisherman coughed violently and survived. The locals stared, not grateful, but worried. One old woman whispered in broken English, "This island hides bad blood." Jake laughed it off, but Fero didn't. The dog kept staring into the jungle beyond the beach, tail stiff, body tense. Later that evening, Jake and Fero checked into a wooden eco-lodge surrounded by dense forest. The manager, Mr. Rowan, was overly polite, too polished for such a remote place. He asked too many questions. "You travel alone? Just the dog? How long you stay?" Fero growled softly every time Rowan smiled. That night, the island changed. Fero woke up suddenly, barking. Jake grabbed a flashlight and stepped outside. Down near the shoreline, a faint red glow flickered. Not fire, something metallic reflecting moonlight. Fero pulled hard on the leash, dragging Jake toward the beach. They found footprints. Not tourist footprints, heavy boots, military style, and something else, drag marks leading toward the jungle. Then Fero froze. His ears pinned back, his nose caught a sharp smell. Blood. Jake followed his gaze and saw it, a torn piece of fabric caught on a branch, dark stains soaked into it. Nearby, half buried in sand, was a broken phone, its screen cracked, still blinking with one unread message. They lied. The island isn't safe. Fero suddenly bolted, barking wildly into the darkness of the jungle. Jake hesitated only a second before running after him, unaware that this single choice had already placed him and his dog in the middle of a crime the island had buried for years. And somewhere deep within the trees, someone was watching them both.
Jake chased Fero into the jungle, branches slashing at his arms as moonlight vanished behind thick leaves. The island that looked peaceful by day now felt alive, breathing, watching. Fero's barks echoed ahead, sharp and urgent, then suddenly stopped. "Fero!" Jake whispered loudly. He found the dog standing still near a shallow ravine. Fero sniffed the ground, moving in tight circles. His body language shifted from alert to focused. This wasn't fear, this was investigation. The ground was disturbed, leaves crushed, blood droplets dried into the soil. Jake crouched, realizing the truth. Someone had been dragged, not attacked randomly. This was planned. A sudden crack. Jake spun around just as a rock whizzed past his head. A shadow moved between trees. Fero lunged, barking violently, forcing the figure to retreat deeper into the jungle. "Hey, stop!" Jake shouted. No answer, only silence. They followed the trail until it ended near a hidden clearing. In the center stood a rusted metal hatch, half covered with moss. Fero scratched at it aggressively. Jake lifted the hatch. Inside were wooden crates, some broken. Inside one, medical gloves, empty syringes, and sealed black bags. Another crate contained old ID cards, tourists, locals, even foreign researchers, all marked missing. Jake's stomach dropped. This isn't an island resort, it's a dumping ground. Suddenly, Fero growled again, low, dangerous. Footsteps. Jake shut the hatch quickly and pulled Fero behind a tree. Two men walked past carrying rifles, speaking in hushed tones. "Body's gone," one said. "Dog?" the other asked. "Didn't see it, but someone's asking questions." Jake's blood ran cold. They were already being hunted. Back at the lodge, Jake contacted the mainland police using a weak signal. He sent photos of the crates and IDs. The response came slow. Signal unclear. Evidence insufficient. Stay safe. Stay safe on an island run by killers. That night, Fero refused to sleep. He paced, nose to the door. Around 3 a.m., he barked sharply and scratched at the window. Jake peeked outside. Mr. Rowan stood near the dock, loading something heavy into a boat, wrapped in plastic. Fero growled so fiercely Jake feared he'd break the glass. Jake grabbed his bag. He knew one thing now. Fero wasn't just protecting him, he was mapping the crime. Smells, sounds, routines. At dawn, a scream shattered the calm. A tourist had been found dead near the cliffs, throat slit. The island police arrived, confused and slow. Fero pulled Jake toward the body, sniffing, circling, barking once. Jake noticed it then, the same boot prints, same chemical smell, same pattern. This wasn't a random murder, it was a message. And the hidden enemy now knew Jake and Fero were too close to the truth. As sirens echoed, Fero suddenly snapped his head toward the jungle, teeth bared. Because somewhere out there, the killer had just changed the plan. And this time, Jake was the target.
The island police taped off the cliffside, but it was clear they were overwhelmed, or pretending to be. The dead tourist lay under a white sheet, waves crashing below like they were trying to erase the crime. Jake stood back with Fero, watching every detail. Fero didn't bark this time. He studied. His nose hovered inches above the ground, moving slowly, methodically. Then he sat, one sharp bark. He looked toward the jungle path, then back at Jake. "Trail?" Jake whispered. Fero took off. Ignoring the protests of a lazy officer, Jake followed his dog. The trail wasn't obvious to human eyes, but Fero followed it confidently, through wet rocks, broken shrubs, and finally to a narrow service road behind the cliffs. There, something strange waited. A delivery truck, engine warm. Jake snapped photos just as the driver returned. The man froze when he saw the dog. "That dog," he stammered. "It shouldn't be here." Fero snarled, teeth flashing. The man ran. Island police caught him minutes later. Inside the truck, blood-stained tarps, surgical tools, and chemicals matching the crates from the jungle. It was the first real break in the case. But instead of relief, Jake felt dread, because the police reaction was off. They argued quietly. One officer made a call and looked directly at Jake before turning away. That night, Jake received a message on his phone from an unknown number. "Leave the island, or your dog dies first." Fero sensed Jake's tension, placing his head on Jake's knee. Jake clenched his fists. "They're scared of you," he said softly, "and that makes you dangerous to them." Jake decided to set a trap. Using Fero's heightened senses, Jake walked familiar routes at predictable times. He let himself look careless, vulnerable. Meanwhile, Fero memorized sounds, boat engines, footsteps, the rhythm of patrols. On the third night, it worked. Fero snapped awake, growling. He sprinted toward the storage huts near the dock. Jake followed silently. Two figures argued in whispers. "The police are stalling. Then finish it tonight."
Fero burst from the shadows, knocking one man down. Jake tackled the other. In the struggle, a mask fell off. Mr. Rowan, the polite manager. Before he could escape, sirens wailed. Mainland police boats approached fast. Jake's evidence had finally reached the right hands. Rowan laughed even as he was arrested. "You think it ends here?" he sneered. "The island obeys someone else." As he was dragged away, Fero suddenly barked toward the sea. A speedboat roared to life in the distance, escaping into the darkness. Jake realized the truth too late. Rowan wasn't the mastermind. He was just a gatekeeper, and the real enemy had just slipped away, taking the island's darkest secrets with him.
The speedboat vanished into the night, leaving only silence and unanswered questions. Jake stood at the dock, fists clenched, Fero beside him, still barking at the open sea as if he could smell the escape itself. By morning, Kairoa Island was no longer pretending to be peaceful. Mainland authorities took over, tents went up, officers searched the jungle, the docks, and the lodge. Mr. Rowan confessed to logistics, moving bodies, silencing witnesses, but refused to name his boss. "He's not a man," Rowan said coldly. "He's an idea." That answer didn't sit right with Fero. While humans chased paperwork, Fero followed what they couldn't see. He pulled Jake toward the old lighthouse on the far end of the island, abandoned, officially unsafe. Fero barked sharply at the locked door. Inside, they found maps of shipping routes, medical shipment records, and photos of missing people. One image made Jake freeze. The fishermen they had saved, circled in red. They poisoned them slowly, test subjects. A sound echoed above, footsteps on metal stairs. Jake hid, but Fero didn't. The dog stood tall, barking up the staircase. A man stepped into view, clean, calm, unfamiliar, not a local, not a tourist. "You shouldn't have brought the dog," the man said. He moved fast, too fast. He struck Jake, sending him crashing into equipment. Fero attacked, locking onto the man's arm. The man screamed but recovered, pulling a knife. Jake struggled to stand as the man raised the blade. A gunshot rang out. The man fell. Island police had followed Jake, thanks to Fero triggering a silent alarm earlier by knocking over equipment. The man was identified as Elias Vane, a medical contractor wanted for illegal human testing. The island was his hidden lab. As he was arrested, Vane looked at Fero and smiled weakly. Dogs always ruin perfect systems. With Vane exposed, the operation collapsed. Survivors were found. Families got answers. Days later, Jake and Fero stood on the ferry leaving Kairoa Island. The sun looked warmer now, honest. Jake knelt beside his dog. "You didn't just save me," he said. "You saved everyone." Fero wagged his tail once, but his eyes stayed alert, because as the ferry pulled away, far out at sea, a familiar engine sound echoed faintly, and Fero growled. Some systems don't die, they adapt. The ferry cut through the morning fog as Kairoa Island slowly disappeared behind Jake and Fero. Officially, the case was closed. News outlets called it a shocking discovery. Authorities labeled it a rogue operation. Files were sealed, names were redacted. But Fero didn't believe in closure. He stood at the railing, ears twitching at every distant engine hum. The low growl in his chest hadn't faded since the lighthouse. Jake noticed it and rested a hand on his back. "It's over," Jake said softly, more to himself than to the dog. Back on the mainland, life tried to return to normal. Jake declined interviews, he refused job offers. Instead, he volunteered with search and rescue teams, always with Fero at his side. The dog's instincts became legendary, finding lost hikers, exposing hidden evidence, stopping crimes before they unfolded. One evening, an unmarked envelope arrived. Inside, A single photo, the speedboat, stamped with a date, yesterday. Jake felt the same chill he'd felt on the island. Fero sniffed the photo and barked once, sharp, decisive. "They're still moving," Jake said. He contacted the mainland police unit that had trusted him before. This time, they listened. Patterns emerged. Similar islands, similar disappearances, different names, same method. And always someone watching from the edges. Months later, intelligence led them to a coastal warehouse. The operation was larger than Kairoa, international. As officers moved in, chaos broke out. Someone tried to escape through a side door. They didn't get far. Fero took them down. The arrest shattered the network. Servers were seized. Victims were identified. For the first time, the system didn't adapt. It collapsed. When it was finally over, Jake sat on the floor beside Fero, holding his face. "You were never just my dog. You were the guardian." Years later, people would tell stories about a German Shepherd who solved crimes without a badge, who saw what humans ignored, who never looked away from danger. As for Fero, he slept peacefully. But even in rest, his ears stayed alert, because some guardians don't protect places, they protect truth. And truth, once awakened, never goes back to sleep.